okay?
You can just leave that on for
Yeah,
now.
okay. All right.
Yeah. And then that one will be live. So you can
And then,
grab it.
all right, so where should this be for me, just speaking?
Well, he'll pick you up with this one. That's only if you go out that way.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
where do you want it, Cliff? Are you going to grab it out this way?
Yeah, I'll just take it out of the stand. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then if you're not going to use the stand, let's put it over there. Or we can put it underneath it.
Okay.
Put it over there.
All right. All right. Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay. We'll take it away. Good? Good? Are we all set? Whew, I think so.
All right. I'll make a little announcement. Good morning. Are we ready for church? All right, we've got a few technical difficulties taken care of, and we are ready to gather for this service. We are going to start a little differently. We have a beautiful video that will play while Phil Pletcher does the music this morning, so we invite you to see that as part of our gathering time together. Will you join me in taking a big breath as we prepare for this? Welcome to worship. Good morning. It is good to be with you this morning. It is good to be with all of you, whether you are here together in this gathering of good company or you are joining us from home, virtually, or in some other platform and dimension at some other time. I know many of you I've talked with this morning still do not have electricity, and so we are hoping for you that you find strength and rest in this time together. And for those who will watch this later when you do have power, welcome this morning. Extra points for those who came with no electricity today. My name is Reverend Christopher Rowe, and I serve as the senior minister here, and it is always a pleasure to be with our guest speakers during the summer speaker series. This morning we welcome Ken Porter, and we look forward to his words, as well as Phil Pletcher, who is providing the beautiful music today. As we prepare for this time with one another, we have a reading that is inspired by Ken's message. He will be talking and sharing his vision this morning about how we can change our culture by learning to listen deeply within, allowing ourselves to access vital information that is still in the process of emerging. So as part of gathering and then entering into this time of worship, hear these words from Andrienne Maree Brown. Emergence emphasizes critical connections over critical mass, building authentic relationships and listening with all the senses of the body and of the mind. This can have profound impact on our church and our world because of the fractal nature of human relationships and institutions. A fractal is a pattern that repeats forever, and every part of the fractal, regardless of how zoomed in or zoomed out you are, looks very similar to the whole image. Fractals can be observed in abundance in the natural world, including in ferns, tree branches, nautilus shells, coastlines, and galaxies. Benoit Mandelbrot created a mathematical formula which, when plotted on a graph, creates an iconic abstract of a fractal. As he says, and as you are about to witness, a fractal is a way of seeing infinity.
Tearing me apart from the inside out so I can see myself from the inside. How long? Tearing me apart from the inside out so I can see myself from the inside. Tearing you apart from the inside out so you can see yourself from the inside. Tearing us apart from the inside out so we can see ourselves from the inside. And might be causing pain, and might be coming home, and might be saying it's all he asked for.
Good morning. Sorry for all the technical difficulties this morning. Hopefully my sound is okay now. Okay. I'm hearing a little ring up here, is it? Okay. We'll roll with it. So thanks to you all for coming. As we bring ourselves into a place of mindfulness, I think I'm going to step back a little bit. into a place of mindfulness and curiosity and receptivity, I want to invite you to really feel your body in the chair. Really feel your feet on. Okay. How's that? Really hear your ears on the side of your head. And really let yourself be in your body. Really let yourself be here. I'm going to attempt to get the other microphone. Okay, am I on? Okay. And because we're going to be dealing today with the difference between implicit and explicit knowledge, I'm going to invite you to let your body answer this question instead of your normal thinking mind. Normal thinking mind wants to pop off a snappy answer. I want to invite you to just slow it down and notice what kind of emotion emerges, what kind of sensation from your body emerges when you hear the question. And then I'd like to hear some responses from maybe 2 or 3 of you. So the question, as you let yourself receive it with your body, is, how does it feel to be sitting in this seating arrangement? So just take that in. And if you start to notice something emerging from your body in response, just go ahead and slip your hand up. And again, not a story, not an explanation, but just like, what is the feeling and what's your body saying? Pass? Okay. Anybody else? All right.
It feels much friendlier.
Much friendlier. All right. And then let's just get a sense of if anybody resonates with that sense that it feels much friendlier. Just go ahead and slip your hand up. And just kind of look around. Look around at, this is your subgroup. Just see each other. Okay. Okay, anybody else?
Twisted.
Twisted. All right. Anybody resonate with this feeling twisted? Okay, so again, look around at each other. Like, notice this is your subgroup. Nice. Let's take one more. If anybody has one.
It feels more like I'm a part of the group.
Yeah, more a part of the group. Anybody resonate with that? Okay, again, look around, see who's in this subgroup with you. Nice. All right, I guess that's it.
Our reading this morning that will pull us deeper into our time with one another is from Andrienne Marie Brown. Hear these words as they call us into this very holy place. Over and over again, it becomes known the peace we seek is seeking us. The joy, a full bud, awaiting our attention, justice in our hands, longing to be practiced, the whole world learning from within. This thrilling moat in the universe, laboratory, labyrinth, internalized demands, you are the one you are waiting for. Externalize love, bind together us into a greater self, a complex movement, a generative abundance, an embodied evolution. Learn to be here. Critique with a seductress. Critique is a seductress. Her door is always open. So what if you get some? We are going further past reform to wonder. This requires comprehension that cannot fit into words. Out beyond our children, beyond the end of time, there is a ceaseless cycle, a fractal of sublime, and we can come to create it, to soil our hands and our faces, loving and loving ourselves and all our places.
Okay, so I guess I'm holding this now. Oops. Hang on a second. Okay, tech issues. Gotta love it. So my talk later in the service will be an invitation to imagine a very different future by practicing a very different present, one that requires courage, curiosity, and love. I hope most of this will feel like beauty and inspiration, but I'm also going to touch on some rather dark aspects of the human experience. I know this will impact each of you differently, but it will impact you, consciously or unconsciously. So for our meditation this morning, I'd like you to join with me in a very active practice of settling your nervous system. I want to share with you two simple tools, one using breath and one using movement. So with the breath, what you want to do is lengthen your exhale. Have your exhale maybe twice as long as your inhale. And an effective way to do that is to restrict the flow of air on the exhale. I'm going to show you 3 ways to do that. One is by restricting your lips like this. So let's do that with me a couple times. Another way is by restricting your throat, like you're fogging a mirror. And then a third way is by restricting with your voice, like with a hum or an om, like this. Let's do one more. It's so nice. just take a moment and notice your nervous system, hopefully feeling calmer and more settled. And then the second way is with movement. Just feel free to put your hands over your heart and then just gently rock, either side to side or forward and back, as you're comfortable, as you're able. And then you can put this together with a long, slow exhale. Yeah, I love that some of you are umming. So feel free to do this anytime you feel the need during the service. And anytime you feel the need to do this through the rest of your life. So it's always a little scary getting up and speaking in front of people. Some people will get over their stage fright by imagining their audience sitting in their underwear. Don't worry, I'm not doing that. But what I am imagining is that we are all a field of mushrooms. Now, lest you take offense, you have to know that I love mushrooms. I am fascinated by mushrooms, and part of the fascination for me is that the mushrooms that we see above the ground are actually the fruiting bodies of the actual organism, which is the mycelium, which grows below the surface of the earth. The mycelium is the organism, the unified organism, and it's a network of passageways that allow the fruiting bodies and trees and other plants to communicate with each other. So that's what I'm imagining. I'm imagining one organism manifesting as lots of individual fruiting bodies. So this morning I want to talk about the relationships between you and you and you and me and us, Fountain Street Church, the human race, the powerful institutions of the world, the entire biosphere. So thank you for giving up 8 hours of your Sunday to hear what I have to say. Just kidding, I hope. I want to talk about all these interrelationships, and I want to talk about them in the beautiful language of Adrienne Maree Brown and Sophie Strand, drawing on metaphors of fractals, murmurations of starlings, and the mycelial networks of mushrooms. But first, we're going to go dark. I want to name something I think we all already know, but sometimes we need to hear it before we know it. When we know it, but we don't know that we know it, it's called implicit knowing. Once we recognize it, and then we know that we know it, it's called explicit knowing. Explicit knowing is conscious, factual, concrete, precise. Implicit knowing is unconscious, intuitive, abstract, often ambiguous. Explicit is the realm of reason, rationality, and analysis. Implicit is the realm of emotion and intuition. Explicit is fixed, implicit is emergent. Here's an example of the difference. Hang on. Okay, Lake Michigan. It's the 4th largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area, and the 5th largest by volume in the world, and it's only 45 minutes from here. It's a very big lake. It's got 1,640 miles of coastline. But when I'm on the beach at, say, Sleeping Bear Dunes, taking in the stunning visual beauty of the coastline, as the afternoon sun sprinkles diamonds on the water's surface, I feel something in my body, a serenity my body expresses through a deep relaxation, a pleasant heaviness. Or when I step over the coastline and into the water and submerge and let my little body be rocked by this massive body, by this enormous mother, I feel deeply soothed, and my body remembers something primordial that I may never be able to put into words. Yes, explicitly, I know there are 1,180 cubic miles of water in this body, and implicitly, I know how it actually feels to be held and rocked by this much water. To borrow from the language of statistics, explicit knowledge is necessary, but not sufficient. We need the hard data and rationality of the explicit, and we need the intuition and emotion of the implicit. As Barry Johnson helped us see, it's a polarity, not a problem. But there is a massive problem in our imbalanced regard of the two. Culturally, there is such a strong gravitational pull towards the explicit and such dismissal of the implicit. In our culture, expertise almost always refers to the explicit, and yet we're all largely unrecognized experts on ourselves and our emergent truth. This sermon was written primarily by tapping implicit knowledge, and not just mine. I had a number of co-conspirators who I met with over the summer, mostly one-on-one, sometimes in small groups, who allowed me access to their implicit knowing. We allowed ourselves to be vulnerable and transparent with each other. We witnessed in each other the process of letting our implicit emerge into our explicit knowing, and in so doing, we wrote this talk together. It's been a deeply moving experience, and I hope it's just the beginning. Almost always when I drop in, I feel a pain, a multi-level pain. Pain that we don't all just completely know this and live from it. Pain about the impact of most of us not knowing this and not living from it. An impact that takes the form of record temperatures, record wildfires, dying reefs, medieval wars and medieval despots in the 21st century, racialized, gender-based, orientation-based violence, and hundreds of millions of people in acute hunger, while the billionaires of the world, who could feed all the hungry with 1/3 of 1% of their total wealth, instead use their money to make more money and maybe enjoy a little space tourism. There's only one way this apocalyptic reality could have come into being and can continue to exist. We have lost connection. We have lost connection to our bodies, and in so doing, lost our empathic connection with each other and lost our connection to the earth, which is the source of us and the source of life. Apocalypse, from its Greek root, means an unveiling, a revelation. Here's what I see being revealed. When we exalt the explicit and devalue the implicit, we disconnect from ourselves, from each other and the earth, and this allows us to harm and even destroy ourselves, each other, and the earth. We've lost access to innate wisdom, to implicit wisdom, and damn does it show. There's no way we could destroy ourselves other than to be horribly disconnected from ourselves. The human race is in trauma, unresolved, collective, complex, intergenerational, self-perpetuating trauma. We need to learn to reclaim the implicit. But first, it helps to understand more deeply why and what's at stake. Which brings us to fractals. Again, fractals are never-ending patterns that appear similar at every scale. In her 1980 book, For Your Own Good, Alice Miller, offers us a dark example of the fractal nature of human relationships. Germany, pre-World War II, and going back to the mid-19th century. Parents were taught and encouraged to inflict whatever level of emotional abuse and corporal punishment was needed to break the will of their children, to inhibit their natural exuberance. Child-rearing manuals of the time used that actual language: break their will, squelch their exuberance. It was effective. The breaking of a child's spirit happens on many levels. The obvious level is that they no longer resist the tyranny of their oppressors, which in this case, sadly, was their parents. But if you go down one level of scale, you can see that they had to become their own internal tyrant and inhibit their own exuberance, because if they didn't, their spirit would naturally burst forth and they would be met with severe consequences from their external tyrants. And then if you scale down again, you see the same pattern playing out on a biochemical level, as dopamine and serotonin, the neurotransmitters of will and joy and satisfaction, are downregulated by the nervous system's persistent stress response. Then if we return to where we started at the level of the parent-child relationship, and then we scale up one more level, we see the same pattern play out on the national level, where the vast majority of the German citizenry genuflected before a political tyrant. A tyrant, by the way, whose father apparently took the advice of those child-rearing manuals to heart and exacted it with heartlessness and brutality. If you watch footage of Adolf Hitler, his seething rage is palpable. And we all know how that story ends. But tragically, it was inevitable because it was playing out at every other scale. Hitler's rage was not just his own. He was carrying his father's. He was carrying his culture's self-perpetuating trauma. Let's take another breath. Rock. Allow your nervous system to settle, to be soothed. And as you feel your system settling, I want to assure you there is a beautiful example of fractals on the way. By the way, if you happen to be drawing parallels to the current American socio-political landscape, well, that's why we need to talk about this. The underlying equation hasn't changed, so the fractal manifestations continue to look very similar. And the underlying equation hasn't changed because culture, in all its beauty and all its horror, has a tenacious persistence and continuity. And here's what I think is the primary reason why. For the first 12 to 18 months of our lives, our learning environment is our parents' unconscious mind. Just take that in for a moment. Another way to say it is, for the first 12 to 18 months, all of our learning is implicit. We don't have the faculty of cognition yet. We learn exclusively with our mirror neurons at that age. It makes no difference what our primary caregivers explicitly believe. We're going to learn whatever they implicitly believe. If a parent is implicitly carrying unresolved rage, shame, fear, It doesn't matter how strongly they explicitly believe they're a loving parent, a good Christian, would never hurt their child. The child is going to pick up the implicit and only the implicit. Conversely, if a parent is implicitly filled with love and presence and attunement, it doesn't matter how strongly they explicitly believe they're not ready to be a parent. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to mess this child up. The child is going to learn love and presence and attunement. This is most likely the primary vehicle through which culture gets transmitted from one generation to the next. So what do we do with this? Be better parents? Well, sure, that's always a great idea. But almost every parent is trying to be a better parent, and hopefully most are succeeding. But what we're really talking about is becoming a more conscious human, which means getting curious about our implicit and then continually inviting it into our explicit awareness. Which means we have to learn to consciously re-inhabit our bodies so we can regain access to the implicit. And then we need to learn how to communicate with each other from a place that deeply honors the implicit. The more we start doing this, the more empathy and connection we will feel with ourselves, each other, and the planet, and the more impossible it will become to desecrate any of these. Because of the apparent fractal nature of everything, what happens at the very large scale happens at the very small scale, and vice versa. If you and I want the dominant power structures of the world to become more compassionate, or compassionate at all, then you and I need to become more compassionate. You need to realize that the person sitting right next to you, whoever they are, maybe a complete stranger, maybe your spouse of several decades, is carrying a lifetime of pain and a lifetime of joy and a fire of longing and a lifetime of dreams. And if you could really feel what they carry, your heart would burst. If you could really feel what they carry and they could really feel what you carry, your relationship would never be the same. And if your relationships change, and my relationships change, and our relationships change, guess what? The world changes. We could start saying, free the mind, grow the soul, trust the body, change the world. Thank you, Reverend Jody. Now we're getting to the good part, although this also comes with a significant piece of darkness. Fountain Street Church is in a perfect position to facilitate or catalyze this shift. It sits somewhere mid-scale between the personal and the global. It's a perfect laboratory. Ordinary people like you and I can easily influence the culture of Fountain Street, and Fountain Street can influence much larger systems. We can nudge Fountain Street, and Fountain Street can nudge the collective consciousness toward our next evolutionary stage, where, as Ken Wilber says, we're able to transcend and include all of our previous developmental stages. And we have some serious including to do before we start transcending. In 2020, Fountain Street hired Reverend Mariella as our senior minister. She was the first senior minister in the church's 150-year history to be female and the first to be a person of color. years. A year later, she resigned, citing an intolerable level of racism, sexism, and other characteristics of white supremacy culture. A year after that, our associate minister, Reverend Greta Joe, also resigned, calling out the same thing and using the more generalized term supremacy culture to highlight the breadth of the oppression. I'm going to use the term dominator culture. It comes out of a very early stage of human evolution, the evolution of human consciousness. And yet, even though it comes from a very early stage, it still dominates. Yang dominates yin. Male dominates female. Explicit dominates implicit. Hierarchy dominates community. Power over dominates power with. It's been said that fish will be the last to discover water. Well, this is the water we swim in. We don't see it because it's always been here. It's actually become very implicit. We cannot have beloved community in a dominator culture. That's not a polarity. That's a problem. That's a problem that needs to be solved. I'm pleased to see the many efforts being made here to address and overturn this dominator culture, this supremacy culture. Most of those efforts, from what I can see, are explicit, and I fully support this. We need explicit knowledge, and lots of it, to end the perpetuation of the toxic elements of our culture. And, once again, explicit is necessary, but not sufficient. It's imperative that we also address this on the implicit level. Here's what it takes. First and foremost, it requires learning embodiment, learning the language of the body and the autonomic nervous system. This is where our implicit expresses itself. Dominator culture runs on separating our heads from our bodies. It could not and would not exist if everyone was grounded in their bodies, in their hearts, in their empathy, in their implicit knowing. It just wouldn't make sense, quite literally. We all started out fully embodied, but most of us, if not all of us, have had it trained out of us. It needs to be relearned and practiced, and we also need to learn something we didn't come in with, which is the ability to regulate our emotions and soothe our nervous systems. Learning this increases our capacity to sit with emotional discomfort, which is crucial if we're going to move beyond dominator culture. When we can't sit with emotional discomfort, we tend to project it onto others or try to coerce them into changing their behavior so we don't have to feel our feelings. This tendency fuels dominator culture and also makes people easy prey for tyrants and conspiracy theorists. Fortunately, there are abundant resources for learning and practicing embodiment and emotional regulation. Mindfulness meditation, insight meditation, otherwise known as Vipassana meditation, yoga, Jean Ginlin's focusing, and a wide variety of somatic therapies, to name a few. For the more adventurous, psychedelics and psychedelic-assisted therapy will get you there in the express lane. What I practiced with people in preparation for this service is a modality called insight dialogue. It's basically insight meditation out loud with other people. It's along the same lines as Quaker Friends Meeting or Parker Palmer Circles of Trust. It's an intentional process of settling into your body, quieting the ever-busy thinking mind, and grounding, and grounding, and grounding. And and creating spaciousness for implicit information to emerge at its own slow pace. And implicit information hang on. Okay. And implicit information tends to emerge very slowly, sometimes glacially. Without this kind of intentionality, we default to a deeply ingrained patterns of thinking and communicating. And when we live in and swim in a dysregulated and coercive culture, the imprints of this culture are what we will default to. With this kind of intentionality, on the other hand, we are actively engaging our neuroplasticity, making new and sometimes astonishing connections, producing insights that simply were not available in the finite realm of explicit knowing. I think every one of us practicing this summer experienced it as profound. To quote some of the insights that emerged, it feels like it's opening a process, opening a portal, a felt sense of interconnectedness, a safe container, a deep trust, because when we're exploring together, the openness isn't as daunting. And a felt sense that if everyone was doing this, it would be a radically different world. So here's what I see for this church. We need to racinate and murmurate. Sophie Strand describes our culture and our institutions as deracinated, meaning uprooted or unrooted. We worship sky gods and declare dominion over the earth. We detach our heads from our bodies and our spirits from the earth. And we set up institutional hierarchies that reflect this. Fountain Street is no exception. Nobody's fault in particular, but we've inherited a medieval hierarchical structure that is vertical and top-down. We're a long ways from a bishop in a tower handing down edicts to the masses, but we need to own the reality that these dominator culture characteristics still exist here and still influence us. It's the water we swim in. We love Reverend Christopher and Reverend Jody, and we have a phenomenal governing board and an awesome staff. I'm certainly not saying tear it all down by any means. We're still going to want a vertical structure and a vertical ministry, and we need a lateral ministry. I'm pretty sure I can speak for both Christopher and Jody. They don't want to be our messiahs. We have to racinate ourselves and the culture of our church. We have to root our mushroom fruiting bodies back into the earth and back into the mycelium that unifies us. When we're truly unified, we can murmurate like starlings, each of us tuned in to the neighbors in closest proximity to us in the formation, to our little subgroups, which are many and are overlapping. Tuning into our neighbors, each of us changing speed and direction based on implicit information from our neighbors' bodies. That murmuration we watched earlier wasn't orchestrated by a boss or a minister or a president. It was a self-organizing emergence relying on deep attunement and unity. I have energy to put into lateral ministry here. Talk to me if you do too. Let's make it happen. This is how we plant the seeds of an irresistibly loving future, a future we magnetize into existence. Dominator culture pushes, emergent culture invites. One last piece I need to touch on: safety. There is a pseudo-safety in the medieval model where you passively receive information and inspiration from someone like me, standing in a pulpit, and then go home. But as Gabor Mate says, safety is not the absence of threat. It is the presence of connection. True interpersonal safety doesn't come from avoiding risk. It comes from being vulnerable with each other and allowing ourselves to be met and held and supported in our vulnerability and loved. In his book, The Myth of Normal, Gabor says, the myth is that the world is normal and you're damaged. The reality is the world is badly damaged. And so, yes, of course you're damaged. You're part of the world. Of course I'm damaged. I'm part of the world. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. We're part of a badly damaged world. But you get to be part of a badly damaged world that is waking up. The part of the world that is consciously healing. And you can wake up and consciously heal by allowing yourself to engage with and be vulnerable with and hold space for and be held by beloved community. So take that in for a moment. I want to come down from my pulpit. I want to be in this with you. I want to feel this together. Join me. Feel the pain of your brokenness. The pain of my brokenness. Feel it. And feel the part of you that is waking up. Feel the part of you that is willing to do the work of healing a damaged world. And now, if it feels safe, notice each other feeling this. Notice your neighbors in this murmuration. Notice how it feels to be in this formation with each other, in this organism with each other. This is how we heal ourselves, our church, the world. So as we're all feeling this together, I want to close by saying something to all of you. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to feel the painful reality of being part of a damaged world. Thank you for being willing to wake up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. One of the rituals that takes place here every week is the weekly collection of the offering. This is a rhythm and a ritual in the life of our church that also points us towards our interconnectedness. And that is because 50% of this collection every week goes back into the world towards other organizations and communities that share in the pursuit of a more loving and just world. This is a rich tradition here that many of us are proud of. And so in the spirit of collective impact and our broader community and love and compassion, our offering will now most graciously be received.
Okay, for the final hymn, we're doing a round, building bridges, and we'll sing through the whole thing once, everybody. And then I'm going to be one, so I'll sing the first line, and then when I start singing the second line, house left will start with number one, and then when they get done, and then we'll do it twice. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you with a reach out to me, with all of our voices and all of our visions. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach for you with a reach out to me, with all of our voices and all of our visions. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges, we mean our division. I reach out to you and we reach out to me, with all of our voices and all of our visions. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Oh, and by the way, you guys did really good on the sight reading of that first hymn.
All righty. We have a few announcements today. You can tell we're getting closer to the start of the church program year. One of them is from the art committee, and specifically the subgroup responsible for Art Prize. We have Art Prize coming up at the end of September into early October, and as part of that, it is a big lift, and we need volunteers to sign up to be docents and or welcomers and greeters. And so there is more information in the beat if you're interested in that, or you can reach out to Paul Arnold. And that is as simple as just standing and helping direct people or welcoming people right at the door. It takes a whole crew, and so if that's something you might enjoy or just meeting new people, please reach out to Paul Arnold or check the beat regarding that. The second announcement is that there will be a small celebration of life for Lisa Najeka today at Huff Park at 1 p.m. It was in the beat. A group of congregants has put that together. That is at 1 p.m. at Huff Park, and I've been told to let you know that even if you didn't RSVP, you are welcome there, 1 o'clock at Huff Park. I also wanted to lift up that this is the last Summer Speaker Series Layperson Sunday. Ken kind of took us out for the summer, and we are so grateful for that. Another huge bit of gratitude goes to the Religious Services Committee. That is Heather Palmer. I think I see her way in the back. Yep, there she goes. Carol Koistra and Dick Wood. We are immensely grateful for the work that goes into putting on this multi-month long series. It takes a lot of preparation and connecting and sometimes coaching and different things. And so we are grateful for the Religious Services Committee. And we are also profoundly grateful for the speakers this summer. I feel like every summer I think there's no way it can be better than last. And we are so fortunate. And so thank you to everybody who makes this series possible. Next week will be our last Sunday in the chapel, and then we will move over to the church program year on September 10th. So that'll be 11 o'clock in the big church and 9:30 chapel gathering here in the chapel. And so it's going to be an exciting year, and more information will be coming about that shortly. Will you please help me in thanking Ken once again? Thank you. A message like that is always timely, but it felt very appropriate this morning given the nature. Yeah. Of course. There is a child care Together West Michigan meeting today after this, right here. And so that is a part of our work with Together West Michigan. Fountain Street's a big part of that. It'll be a conversation about the child care prevailing issues in West Michigan. So please plan to stay for that if that's something you're interested in, or you're just interested in a healthier and more resilient community to live in. Thank you, Meredith, for reminding me of that. Phil Pletcher, thank you so much for your gifts as music as well. And a big thank you to our AV tech staff, especially today. Thank you. There's always Cliff back there and a whole crew in the back sound room who you never see, so we are deeply grateful for all of them. Friends, as we go forth from this space, I wish you a happy and healthy and safe rest of your summer as we round things out and we come towards Labor Day next weekend. May you go in peace, may you pursue love, and may you know your connection and your interconnectedness and your belonging with those around you and among you. Go in peace, you are loved. We'll see you next week.